If this is your first time to Coming Back to Love, the podcast, welcome. We're so glad you found us. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Either way, you're not here by accident. I'm your host, Karen Walker Cohn, a wife, a mom, entrepreneur, friend, and dreamer who is ready to step into more of who I am created to be. I am committed to personal transformation for global impact. Now, this podcast may be very different from others. Our guests don't come with a topic or agenda. They come open and ready to receive and deliver the message that's meant for you. You will also notice our podcast is not overly produced. This is on purpose. Our hope is we will inspire you to step into who you're created to be, regardless of how it may look. Take inspired action on that book, business, relationship, and yes, podcast, or whatever it is on your heart. In my experience, my mess usually ends up being my message. I encourage you to approach our time today with a beginner's mindset and with openness to receive what is meant for you. In this episode, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Tammy Cox, a dedicated transformational coach specializing in reviving intimacy in marriages. With a unique focus on inner child healing, Tammy dives deep into the root causes of intimacy breakdown, guiding her clients on a transformative journey towards rekindling the flame of love. Tammy's own life journey was marked by significant childhood wounds, leading her to critical crossroads where she felt she had only two choices: surrender to despair or embark on a path of healing. She chose the latter, embarking on an inspiring voyage of self-discovery that ultimately shaped her into the coach she is today. It was a profound personal journey that fueled Tammy's determination to create the Reclaim Your Marriage program, a unique approach designed to empower women to save their marriages even if their spouses are not on board. With over 15 years of marriage and 3 beautiful daughters, Tammy brings a wealth of experience to her coaching practice, making her not only a compassionate guide, but also a living testament to the potential for growth within a partnership. Through Tammy's guidance, women can rediscover the spark in their marriage and heal from past wounds and cultivate a lasting, fulfilling connection with their partner. I met Tammy through her husband, connecting her with me. We belong to the same Facebook community group for podcasters. Tammy and I had a discovery call, and 5 minutes in, I knew I would have her on my podcast. My conversation with her can only be described as liberating. I know Tammy and I will remain connected. We speak about some very adult themes, so this podcast may not be suitable to all listeners. And now here's the wonderful Tammy Cox. So Tammy, when you hear the title of this podcast, Coming Back to Love, Inspiring Stories on Shifting Perspectives, what story from your life comes to mind?
I would, coming back to love, it might as well say to me, coming back to self. I always saw life. I always saw me as separate. I think we do come into this physical experience seeing ourselves as separate than our source or separate than others. And so coming back to love kind of represents to me like remembering who I am. At the core part of who I am, the part of me that has no end and no beginning. So the story I would have to say is the story where I came to a place where I was in so much emotional pain and stress and strain that I said, I'm either ending this physical experience right now, or I'm healing myself, because I will not live and suffer like this another moment. It was the moment of such excruciating pain that you come to the end of it by saying, this has to be the end. It has to end now. And so one might say that was like the darkest time in my life, but it was the time that birthed the light for me. And so I obviously made the choice to heal myself, which means that I always knew that I could. It
Mm.
always knew that I always, the core essence of who I am, always knew that it was within me, right? That there's nothing outside of me that can do it for me. But it was a choice that I had. And so I made it in that moment, in that really dark, horrid moment
Mm.
where, I was contemplating, listen, I'm taking this gun and I'm,
Wow, Tammy. Yeah.
it was one of those real moments. And when I think back to that now, it's like, I almost can't even find the thought process of who I was in that moment, because I wasn't the same me, but it was like, it was a beautiful moment that changed everything for me.
Wow. Wow. Are you open to sharing a little bit more about that and how it changed?
Yeah. Um, so I I had a lot of early childhood trauma. I grew up in a very controlling, religious, structured house, where they kind of tried to put a little bubble around us. We didn't know much about what was going on in the outside world. And I was 11 years old when my parents sat me down and said, "Hey, uh, guess what? Your dad has AIDS and he's dying right now. He doesn't have much longer. So, and 1 month later, he died. And at 11 years old, you don't really understand death.
Right.
Hey, my dad was here yesterday. Now he's not. Wonder when he's coming back. And so it was 13 years old when we get these three adult hormones. I actually found this out much later when I started, getting into this work. But when you're 13 is when you get your three adult hormones. So at 13, everything started going crazy in my little world,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I'd say 13 to 19, I had these series of deaths after his. So he died. And by the way, my dad he was abusive, more verbally than physically, but it was also physical. So when he died, I was left with this sort of like relief because he was so scary to me.
Right.
So I had this relief that also left me with guilt because,
Mhm.
and then also I was sad because I did love a massive part of who he was.
Right.
So I was a very confused young girl. Plus, I was told my whole life I was just like him. So
Mm.
here I am, I'd say ages 13 to 19, I was just in such confusion, bitterness, rage, resentment, like questioning what am I doing here? Like why is life so painful? And 19 was a pivotal time for me because that's when I really stepped into religion, and it was a massive relief for me, although uh it didn't last very long, but it was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, there's some hope, right? And then, over time, but I'd say that there were times where I went through major depressions where I was actually massively suicidal. And so right around 13, when I got those adult hormones and the intensity of all that childhood trauma hit me. And then 19 again, and then I had a really bad postpartum after my second daughter, and that was when I had actually planned out or contemplated how I was going to take my own life.
Right.
It was like the one time where it was so bad that I was planning out, okay, when am I going to do this? How am I going to do it? Okay. I didn't have that experience before. And I think I had my second daughter when I was 29. So I'm 29. This was the deepest, darkest depression. And it's when all of my childhood trauma came bubbling to the surface.
Right.
And it was that moment where I'm like, this is the end. It's either the end or the beginning, and something's got to change. So
Yeah.
29. Did I answer your question?
Oh, like, and brought so many more.
Yeah. Okay.
First of all, I want to honor you for your vulnerability to
Yeah.
share those things. Like, I know that just the fact that you're sharing it is going to support and heal so many other women and so many other people listening. It's going to permission them to do
Yeah.
the exact same.
Yeah.
And that is super meaningful, and really emotional for me because I feel like that's what I'm here on this earth to do. And that's what this podcast is meant to do. So, first of all,
Hmm.
thank you for being so vulnerable and so open. Um, I can't imagine I can imagine a little bit because
Yeah.
some of
You
our
can relate to some
audience,
parts.
yes, exactly. Some of our audience knows enough about my story as well, and just the amount of interflexion and work that gets to be done in order to just share a story like that is powerful, is and that's one of the things, when I first started talking to you, what I really noticed about you is just your amazing presence. And there, to me, just talking to you, I walked away from our conversation going, there's nothing that woman can't do. So
Oh,
I know you might not feel it from
no,
but
I
from on the
don't. That,
outside looking in,
yeah.
you have huge things getting ready to blow up for you. So I'm so
Thank
proud
you, my
and
friend.
honored that you're here. Um, One of the things that I've been so interested in is, and I know I'm shifting gears. So for those of you listening and going, I want to hear more about that story. Well, you get to contact Tammy. You get to find out more. Because the thing that's on my heart right now is obviously just looking at you, you've been able to transmute that hurt and that pain into something
Hmm.
beautiful, and something that's here to serve other people, serve other women. And one of those things is Reclaim Your Marriage program.
Hmm.
And so this is a program Tammy developed to empower women to save their marriages, even if your spouses aren't on board.
Hmm.
And that's something that speaks so um, highly to me because coming from two failed marriages and same thing, like uh, trying and working so hard to change me because I was coming from a place of not enough, so I was
Hmm.
obviously the problem. And I'm not saying that I wasn't. I'm just saying that it was unbalanced. And so
Hmm.
me feeling like, oh gosh, I have so much work that I get to do on this marriage, and I'm not sure that they're on board. So there's a part of me that is like, I'm super interested to hear more about that, because there's a little part of me that goes, I don't know, is that possible?
You and everyone else, including myself before I did it. Well, and from a leadership perspective, when you change the world in which you see, not that it changes, but it does.
Does, yeah.
It changes through the lens in which you view it. Where
Yes,
like
amen.
before I came into my healing journey, everyone else was the problem, not me.
Right,
No, it was all them. And it was definitely my husband.
right.
That was the way I view things. And that, before we come into our journey, we all come in as victims thinking It's what life did to us. It's what he did to us. She did, or my parents. It was definitely my parents. It's what everyone else and circumstances did to us. And then as we kind of dig in, we see that no, 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 that's not exactly true. It's actually us creating our experience. However, before we know we're doing it, we're not really creating what we want, are we?
No.
So it's like once you shift this major piece, and I know the skepticalness I get 100%, but when you change you change every single thing that you see because it's all an illusion, anyways.
Yeah.
So it's really the lens you change. It's the lens you look through. Like, all of my clients, when they come to me, they all think like a victim. And I don't
Mm.
blame them for it. I was a victim at the
Yeah.
beginning of my journey. It's like, that's the way you're supposed to see it until I provide you the new lens that says, here, put these on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we take radical responsibility for our life and we're like, oh, I see my part in all of it.
Mm. So
So
good.
in my line of work, we have what's called commands, which is basically a limiting belief that we create in a high state of negative emotion, which is a traumatic event. And in that moment, boom, we make a decision about ourself or life, a belief that gets so deeply stamped on our subconscious mind that it stays there the rest of our life until we choose to change it, which we can.
Okay.
But I had two that were running rampant in my life. And it was, I'm not lovable and I'm
Mm.
not important.
Right.
And when I went back to through the trauma work I do, when I went back to these really significant events in my life, those were the two beliefs that were on every single one of them as the meaning I placed on these events. So instead of saying, "Oh, my dad's in a bad mood," or he learned this behavior, he's doing the best he can, but he learned that this is the way you treat your kid when they don't do what you say or whatever. The meaning I placed on it as a little girl is I'm not lovable.
Right.
So when you look at the lens meaning, the meaning I put on these events, it was like I created the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all going to be victimized at some point in our life, but that doesn't make us a victim. We're only a victim if we choose to latch onto that belief. Oh, I'm
Right.
the victim. Life
Yeah.
is happening to me.
Right.
I'm not in charge of this. I'm powerless to change it. It's
Yes.
two different ways of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I now, now, like I'm looking at it coming in the marriage that I am now. And I'm
Mhm.
so thankful that, once you do the work, you start to attract, this is one of the questions I get asked as a coach all the time because I coach women and I coach a lot of single women is how do you, uh, how do you get the person of your dreams? How do you get that? It's like you get to become that.
Uh-huh.
And, and so, I'll say like, be the person you want to date, be the person you want to marry.
Mhm.
Um, and so coming out of that now and having that person where it's like, oh yeah, it is possible. It is
Mhm.
possible to manifest those things. It is possible to create that in your life. Now I'm listening to you going, yep, 100%, 100%. I could have chosen that.
Mhm.
And at the time, I didn't even realize that choice was even available to me.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the subconscious and you call them commands, that so in that instance in the work that I do, it's called fact meaning. So what's the fact and what's the meaning that I gave to it? I
Mhm.
talk about that in
That's
my
great.
book. Like, yeah, it's
Fact meaning.
fact meaning. Like the fact is, um, I'm 5'10". So, and people have my whole life called me tall. You're so tall. But because I was in a place of not enough, to me, I made that mean, well, there's something wrong with you.
Oh.
So whenever I'd
Interesting.
hear tall, "Oh, you're so tall," right away, I'd, like,
It's associated
shrink
with the
down.
negative, huh?
Yeah, and I'd
Where
and
did that come from? Where did tall become a negative?
because it was always so in such shock, like, in
Oh.
almost like, "Oh, you're so tall," like, because I towered over people. So, I was there was a piece of me that was like, "I'm making them feel less than, so that they didn't have to feel less than, I'm gonna shrink." And
Mm.
it's to the point where my body, like, I started to walk with a slouch and
Yep.
I'd be hunched over
See it
and
all
where
the
my
time.
yeah, and so I just relate to what you're saying, this
Mhm.
command. Um, so then tell me more about, the actual reclaiming of your marriage and, like, is there any resources if someone's listening, if a woman's
Mhm.
listening right now and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm in that boat. Tammy, give me something, give me some little wisdom nugget that could support me in
Mm.
this time."
Okay, well, there's so much I could give. I first of all, I will give you some resources, free resources I have that I would love for you to, give out, email out, however this goes out to the world. Um, the one thing I will say is aside from there's some people that come to me and there's abuse going on in the relationship on some scale or another. And
Mhm.
in which case I say, just because any marriage can be saved doesn't mean it should.
Mm,
There are women that come to me where they tell me what's happening in their marriage, and I'm like, I'm not helping you save this. I will help you develop yourself into the kind of person who loves and values yourself enough to walk away and
wow.
to adore yourself enough to heal those wounds, the patterns, the reason why you chose this person, because we always attract that person for a reason. And so
Mhm,
don't judge it, right?
mhm,
Don't ever judge it, but look at it with non judgmental eyes and be like, if I'm loving, adoring
mm,
myself, or you could look at it, if they have daughters, I tell them like this is a pattern. So do you wish for your daughters to keep this pattern alive? Because if you do, keep going. There has to be an interjectory. So a lot of times they'll come to me and I will let them know right off the bat that the abuse has got to stop. And if it's on the lighter side, I hate to say these terms, but
I understand what you're saying,
for
yeah.
lack of a better word, if it's on the lighter side, meaning maybe it's just forceful control, maybe it's just like a lot of rules, something like that. I can work with that. But if it is flat out abuse, I'm like,
Mhm, yeah,
still I want for her to go through my program because my program is going to support her to develop the identity to choose what she actually wants because most women don't know what they want.
yeah, yeah,
Most people don't know what they want. They never ask
so good.
themselves. So the first nugget is like, aside from those people, anyone can save their marriage. I believe that wholeheartedly. You cannot change the other person, but you can inspire them. For us, like, I was so done with him. I was so done with my husband. We've been together almost 18 years now, and we were so miserable for so long. And when I got to the place where I was like, hey, buddy, like, you're cool and stuff, but I don't know if I want to be married to you. Like,
Right.
I'm healing myself. I want to be super duper happy. And you kind of seem to still want to do the misery thing. And I'm not down for that anymore. Like, I'm going
Mm,
here. And he was very disturbed by it initially. But after watching me a while, he was like, I think I want some of that peace.
yeah,
That looks kind of
yeah.
yummy. And so he ended up joining me on my
Mm,
disc. And sometimes they won't. Sometimes there's so much of a disconnect, and she's like
yeah,
getting happier and healthier and whole, and he just can't hang. He just does not want to rise to that level. And
right.
so sometimes it's okay to break them off, break them free, not break them off. wrong words. Break them loose, you know?
A different podcast.
Yes, different day for that one. But, you know, things will happen, but for the most part, most marriages are not that far gone. You may think you are,
Mhm.
but you're not that far gone from getting them to rise with you, because he who has the strongest will always wins. And
Mhm.
so women, when they come to me, they're usually the ones, the supporters, they're on the bottom, and they're
Right.
usually with a controller. So what we do in our work together is we
Yeah.
balance out that energy. She's got to get bigger. She's got to fall in love with herself. She's got to stand for
Yeah.
herself. She's got to absolutely put herself first.
Yeah.
And in that case, there is no way we cannot balance out those energies. It's just it's physics is
Yeah.
what it is. It's pure physics. So does it happen like that 100% of the time? No. And I'll tell you why, because some of those women don't want to change.
Yeah.
It's hard to change,
Yeah.
girl. It is.
It's
I am not going to tell
absolutely.
you that I just went poof,
Yeah.
but I was in enough pain that I was like, I can't stay here. This is painful.
Yeah.
So when they want it,
You were gonna be in pain either way. So
you
you
are.
chose yeah, you chose the lesser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes.
Doesn't mean it wasn't painful. It's just like, I've heard that so many times, like, "Oh, change is hard." Yeah, staying the same is hard too. Um, I choose to change,
Mhm.
and I don't even know at this point in my life if change is the right. I think it's more like becoming who I was always meant to be. And the traumatic things in my life that I've allowed to kind of cover up the light, not kind of, to cover up the light that I am.
Mhm.
And it's now removing those. I always, when I talk about this, I picture a lamp. I mean, back in the day, and I'm probably significantly older than you, but back in the day, we'd take scarves and, put it over the lamp. And it was like, oh, it was just a nice ambiance. And it's like, there's through the trauma, through, divorces, through things said, through things I believed, it's just one scarf just kept going over top
Oh.
another, going over
Mhm.
top another until there was such this dim light, until I've like allowed my light to completely dim. It was just a little flicker. And as you start to go, and this is how I heard you say it, or this is what came to my mind, is when the benefits, when the prices I pay start to outweigh the benefits, it
Mhm.
was time to start removing some of those scarves, so to speak.
Mhm.
And where I'm back into like full light bulb mode, full shine mode, all the scarves gone. Doesn't
Even the
mean that it's
shade,
not,
throw the
yeah,
shade out.
it doesn't mean that there's not something there to work on or anything like that, or that I'm completely healed and I don't need this work anymore.
Yeah.
No,
Ain't
it's
never
like
gonna happen, girl,
until like, yeah, until I'm
till you
gone
shed
from
that
this world.
DNA.
Exactly. Exactly. So, gosh, I
Well, and
appreciate that
2,
so much.
it's like trauma gets a bad rap.
Mm,
Trauma gets a bad rap. Trauma is created as a gift. It's like your
I love
subconscious way
that.
of keeping you safe. So even sometimes when people like want to give trauma a bad rap, I'm like, no. Just because we know now with modern science about how our subconscious and our conscious mind, how it all works, right? How
Mhm,
our whole
mhm.
system, our whole computer system, if you will,
Yeah,
works. It's like, but let's not give trauma a bad rap, because it is there to protect you. It is
yeah,
the reason why you don't keep touching the hot stove, you know? Your body is your cells are actually making note of like, that's going to hurt you.
right,
Don't touch it.
right.
So now that we know it's there and it's a gift, okay, we get to choose the different meaning for the thing. I don't have to see myself as unlovable
Mm,
just because I deemed it that when I was 2,
Right.
4, whatever age I chose that meaning, it is my absolute pleasure to go back in and reprogram, because we all got programmed in those first 5 years of life, every
Yeah.
single one of us.
Mhm.
And the reason why it works that way is because we wouldn't be able to function in life unless we had a set of beliefs, which is, epigenetics, boop, boop, boop,
Yep.
7 generations back, where we're basically, they put that little program in our little computer setting so that we can function. But
Mhm.
now that we know that we can go and hack our own system,
Yeah.
it is our pleasure to do so. So, like, yes, let's praise trauma for what it gave us,
Yeah.
and also change the meanings that we placed
Yes.
on ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I was in a coaching session yesterday and that's what I said, like, asked a question. It's like, wait a second. So if you gave it that meaning, so you made stuff up back then, we can still make stuff up now. So
Oh,
why don't just give it a different meaning? It's like she just
totally.
sat there going, oh my gosh. That was the end of the session. It's just like big light bulb moment came on, but, yeah, let's change the meaning. You can make
Yeah,
it mean anything you want it to mean.
anything. And we're sitting here in the same, 95% of our thoughts are just regurgitation, day
Mhm.
in, day out regurgitation. We know thoughts create the results of our life. And it's like, why not choose some new thoughts?
Yeah.
Some new thoughts that create the new ways of being. It's like, why not think on purpose?
Ooh, and I hear people going, "Wait a second, Tammy, it's just that easy?" Yes, it is, it is.
Indeed.
And I think that's the same thing when you say about trauma, it's the same thing that I feel about, um, personal development, personal transformation, doing this work. "Oh, but it's
Hmm.
gonna be so hard." It doesn't have to be, and
Mm-mm.
it could be really fun too.
It
The
is.
I Yeah, and as you keep going, it's like, there are times where I'm like, "Oh, I'm hitting this where I thought I dealt with this, and I'm hitting it again," but what I'm noticing is, the bounce back.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
first hit something really hard in my life, I was curled up in a ball in a corner of my room and ugly cried for 3 days. I couldn't breathe. It was like it was such a and now I come against that same thing. For me, it was, childhood abuse,
Mhm.
and, now I come up against that and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you again. Okay, I know why that's there. Okay."
Mhm.
And it's like you say, I choose to give that trauma or that fear or whatever it is, I choose to send it love and go, you know what? Thank you for showing me that again. I know that you're
Mhm.
trying to keep me safe. Thank you. I love you. And I'm going to choose this way. I'm
Mhm.
going for it. And it's just give it love. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
keep pouring in more fear and, oh, I'm so afraid of this. I'm so afraid of that. And just keep stepping forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you thinking? I just saw something. I wanna know.
Well, I was just thinking about some processes, because whenever someone brings up something, like, I always think, "Ooh, what process would I use for that?"
Ah.
And so, the first 2 languages we learn, when we're born, is color
Mm.
and emotion, and we kinda go, "Boop," our little minds blend them together. So, there's colors that you can directly, like, I'll just ask you, "Okay, first impression, what's your healing color?"
Oh. Oh, for me?
I
The f
I'll just have them, yes,
Oh. Oh, okay.
pop it up in your mind, okay?
Mhm.
Picture that color, you got
Yeah,
a big bubble of it above your head, and
yeah.
with each breath that you take and every beat of your heart, you're breathing it down deeper, 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 deeper to a cellular level. Well, I usually have people use their healing colors to, bubble around certain, because when we go back to a traumatic event, every time you go back to a traumatic event, you will see it more and more negatively. It's a
Mm.
deception of your subconscious mind. And once again, to keep you safe. However, you know how you talked about making up the stories?
Yeah.
We can choose to paint the picture however we want.
Yeah.
And so by utilizing that color, picturing the color bubble around it, like that's your safety bubble. Nothing can
Mhm.
touch you. No fear can come upon you when you are in your healing bubble. And it's whatever color you needed, that young version of yourself needed. Right. And so, and then usually when we're working on pulling out the negative colors, they tend to be the opposite of that healing color. And
Interesting.
so we tend to we quite literally, because physiology will always override your psychology, we just physically, tangibly pull it out. Okay, where do you feel it? First impression. Oh, it's right down here. Like for
Mhm.
me, I hold a lot of my trauma in my lower like uterus area in
Right.
my
Right.
because I had a lot of early childhood trauma, and the first chakra that that's created in utero is your root chakra. So
Right.
I got a lot down there. And so, but a lot of women, I have some of my clients, they have a lot around their heart,
Heart. Yeah, I
some
could
in the
see that.
pit of their stomach,
Mhm.
some like if you have like this goes for like aches and pains too. Some they get it right here in the lower neck, upper back area, hold a lot of trauma there. And we just literally pull it out until they feel the release, because the trauma is stored in the body.
Absolutely.
And it is really your imaging, your imagination is how your subconscious mind is speaking to you. So sometimes they'll get a picture up and I'll be like, okay, put a frame around it. But we're
Mhm.
working with the images in their mind, the colors. And so if you have your healing color, you can literally put it around those events that you tend to go back to and see in that negative context. And when you put it in the bubble, and you bring it into the light, it will completely transmute it.
Wow. I love
So
that.
there's all sorts of different processes. And I think that people, if you've only gravitated towards like, talk therapy or counseling as a way of healing, it's like you are really limiting yourself
Mhm.
to the modern healing modalities that now science and physics is bringing into the picture by
Right.
really letting us know how our subconscious mind and our conscious mind are creating this thing we call reality that
Right.
is, we now know, completely made up.
Right.
No two people are seeing the same images or feeling the same emotion from those same images. We are just all creating a very different experience for ourselves.
Right. 100%. I mean, shifting perspectives. That's what that's what this is about. That's why I speak to so many different people with multiple different belief systems, because I I don't want to miss out on anything. I'm not going to, like, when I was younger, I would, because I grew up in a Christian household, I would let that the fear of
Mhm.
what's out there, and if I listen to someone that is a Hindu, or somebody that's a Muslim, or if I listen to what they're saying, somehow that's going to get on me, and it's going to
Oh, yeah.
pull me
It's
away
gonna
from
get on you,
church, or
girl.
like, yeah, and
It's a
I'm like,
disease.
yeah, like, it's weird. It's like a weird teaching, and I'm like, I want to, if I didn't tap into, and this is why I say come with your conversations with beginner's mindset. And I don't know anything. And I'm coming, and having this conversation with Tammy, because I've learned so much with this, just listening to you. And so
Mhm.
now I get to decide and choose to take those things, put it into practice. And for me, I have found that because I've chosen to do that, and I align with it, that my relationship to God has strengthened. Like, it
Mhm.
more so than where I was before, when running
Mhm.
away because I was like, I was too scared to even have the
Mm.
conversation. So I appreciate you and the time that you're here. And I also, there's something that I wanted to ask you around, because you had mentioned, and this is really interesting to me. is that you were growing up religious. And I'm really interested to find out, like, when you say religious, what do you mean by that?
Mm. Well, okay. So there's people that follow the religion. You know how you were talking about, maybe you weren't explaining it like you were saying, I'm open.
Mm.
People with a religious mindset, they're not open. They say, these are my beliefs. This is how they look. This is how they sound. This is how they smell. And this is how they taste. If
Right.
what you're coming at me with doesn't taste, smell, touch, and
Right.
if the language doesn't line up, then we don't align. Right. So I tell people this, I'm like, the Bible has literally thousands of different religions that are associated with it. Why do you think that is? Because it's so symbolic. And so when I say religious, I mean, um, if it was not literally written out in the Bible, it was not accepted. I had to think, speak, and be like my parents. And the list of don'ts was extensive. You
Right.
can't go here. You can't talk to them. You can't do this. Don't look over there. Don't watch this. Like, we didn't have a TV in my house till I was 9. And then once we did have it, it was very monitored. Everything was monitored. So I'd say it was more than being very legalistic religious, it
Mhm.
was controlled.
Right.
We think this way, we talk this way, we be this way, we don't be
Mhm.
XYZ. And then the list of don'ts was
Right.
like
Right. Mhm.
way longer than the 10 commandments. It was like,
Right.
right? And I still, you and I both, we have this in common. I still study the Bible. I still
Mhm.
go by, because there's so much gold in there.
Yes,
Um,
beautiful. Yeah.
and then there's the places where humans took it all the way left. That's why, there's these large disagreements about certain books of the Bible. Like, for instance, Revelation. I
Mhm.
can't even tell you how many versions of the symbolism of Revelation that I've heard. Right.
Mhm.
And it's like people want to have all these disagreements about it. It's like, that's because it's so highly symbolic. You can't take a beautiful book like the Bible and try and say that it's a one size fits all, because it is so very symbolic. I've
Yeah.
studied it my whole entire adult life extensively, studied it. And you just can't get on the same page. No two people can get on the same page as to what all the symbolism of it works.
Yeah.
And so, but my parents, mostly my dad was the controller in the relationship. So it was mostly him, and he was just a very fearful person. So religious people, when they take it to that extreme, that control, it's like, it's just from this place of extreme fear. My
Fear.
dad didn't want
Absolutely.
me to end up with AIDS
Right.
and dying at 39 like he did.
Right.
He was extremely, I'll use the terms in which how he saw himself, because I believe that's what it was. I don't believe this is intrinsically true, but
Mhm.
he saw himself as an unfixable, like, broken
Yeah.
individual.
Right.
And because of that, he lived in shame his whole life. And because of that, he died at 39 of AIDS. But
Right.
fearful. And that's where that sort of religious control
Mhm.
is, versus someone who's open. They say, hey, I believe like this, but like, because life is always open, it's ever expansive. So there's no way we're going to come to the end of our knowledge. Like, the
Right.
more we learn and press into exploring new things, the more doors open. So we never, I believe, get to the end of like, oh, this is the absolute
Yeah.
truth and it will never change.
Yeah.
It's, I don't
Yeah.
think that's the way life is.
I don't I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's not been my experience anyway, so
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I was probably not the greatest time to ask, but I was
Well,
really curious about, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to ask that." Um so my last question.
uh-huh.
If you could leave just one message for our audience, what would that message be?
There's nothing you can't change.
Mm. Oh,
Don't ever settle for anything. There's just nothing that you cannot change in your life. I believe that's going from victim to victor, is like understanding that you're creating all of it. No one's doing it to you. That
mm.
was the difference for me in my journey, is seeing, the Bible talks about the being the temple,
Mhm.
meaning that God is within you. It's not here, here, here.
Yeah,
God is truly in all of creation. It's the omnipresent. There is nowhere you can go that God isn't. But
isn't.
I was given this image of God, which, even though it's all throughout the Bible, like, make no graven images, meaning make no physical, tangible image of what God is, because God is no thing.
Yeah.
It's pure spirit, and it is everything.
Mhm.
And so you are the embodiment of God. It's not external. So for me, it was learning not to look outside of myself for
Mm.
something to save me, but look deep within,
Right.
because that's where the kingdom of heaven is deep within you. And it is not external. So when we look at our savior outside of ourselves, what we're saying is we don't have the power to change. And so
Mhm.
you're either the victim, meaning you're powerless to change yourself, or you are all of it. And
Yeah.
you get to say who you be, what you
Mhm.
have, and what experiences you're going to live through.
Oh, man. So good. Thank you,
So
Tammy. Oh,
yeah.
I am so happy to know you and have this conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And this has been so good, so uplifting. I know I'm going to leave this conversation with like such a joy and an energy in my heart. And you bring that, like you have this joyous, fun energy that is really contagious. So thank you
Oh,
for bringing that today.
I'm receiving that.
Oh,
It's a pure reflection, because you brought it forth from me. So it is our co-creation. It is purely
yes.
our co-creation. And everyone who's watching, it was just all of us. I mean, I know it's so weird to like think about time and space, but it's like we just really brought the conversation together. And how like divine is that? It's like
Yeah. It's my joy to do
Mhm,
this and to have these conversations. Even when Tammy, even when I started this podcast, so it launched in December of last year, and there was something that's just something blocking me, even in the conversations. And I feel like these last 3, 4 ones that that I've had, has been nothing but, boom, here it is, nothing blocking, and everything's up for grabs. You choose whether you want to answer, you choose whether you don't. I choose whether I want to ask. And to be in that place, just for our audience and our listeners, it's like to be in that place of true, it's not even freedom, it's liberty.
mhm,
It's true liberty, where you're at a place in your life where I know what I'm meant for,
mhm,
and I'm living into it. And like you say, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And
mhm,
once that was a shift in my, I could just let go of all the stuff holding me back.
mhm.
And that's how I feel right
I
now in this
see
moment.
I see your transformation when I look back at when you first began till now. It's like
Yeah.
you have to remember your inner world and your outer world, they're reflecting each other, and
Right.
yours is like, it is so very, very obvious. It's like you busted out of that cocoon, and you're like, "Don't put me back. Don't you dare put me back in there, because
Nobody
I ain't
puts me in
going
your
back.
corner.
I ain't never going back, girl." And then the
Thank you for
wings just
saying.
went,
Yeah.
I mean, powerfully.
Yeah.
It's like you thought you were small. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah. Thank
It's
you for saying
divine.
so,
I just
and
got
that's how I
goosebumps
feel.
everywhere, and you
Me
know
too.
what
Spirit
that
says
means.
yes. Yeah. I just like, and that's why it's so important for me to have conversations like this with you, because there are women like I was, and this is how I say it, is in the back corner of a back room in the dark hiding, yet everything in them, it's like this fight on the inside. Everything in me wanted to be seen and wanted to be heard, and yet I was so afraid of being
Mm.
seen and heard. And so now I get to, just like you are doing, reaching in those corners and pulling people out to stand in their own light, and using our light to do that, because I feel like
And the
that's
fear
what
is
I'm here to do.
real too, Karen. It's like,
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was asked to speak on stage and tell my story, and I said yes, and then I was like, "What did I do?" And then the moment happened. I did everything. Like, I was sweating before. I was like, "No, don't make me go. I don't know. No, no, no." Like, I was
For sure.
horrified. And then they hand me the mic, and I'm like shaking for 5 minutes. I shook like crazy for 5 minutes, like, right? And the fear is real. Like, you are not going to
Absolutely.
not feel the fear. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
Do it
Yeah.
anyway. We were so scared to start. And it was like, but I went through all that for a reason. And
Mhm.
if the reason can't be to let people know, hey, like, I got a story too.
Yeah.
And guess what? You can tell me any, and then women would start to come and share their story with me. And then I was like, all that from just me
Yeah.
sharing my story. It
Mhm.
is like you unleash a power within you that is like, I didn't know what was going to become of it. I just
Right.
knew I was petrified to do it and that I had to do it.
Mhm.
And I shook like crazy. And I did probably every single time I started, I would do the same thing. And the audience, it didn't matter the size of the audience. It could be 5 people, it could be
Right.
50. It didn't matter. I was
Right.
just, but it was like, you are going to be scared, love. You're going to be scared. You're going to
Yeah.
be horrifyingly scared. But on the other side of that fear, when you tell that fear,
Mm.
hey, have a seat, we're going to be okay, we're going to
Yeah.
do this,
Yeah.
and then you do it,
Mhm.
you will experience a kind of life that you never thought possible for
So
yourself.
good. So good. And it's so important for people to hear the confidence doesn't come before the fear. You step out and do it scared anyway. That's how you build confidence.
And how annoying is it when people try and tell you how confident you are and you're like, where do you think it was made, honey? Do you
Yeah.
do you do you think I popped out of the womb like, well, actually, we all
Yeah.
do pop out of
I
the womb.
think that about you. I
It
think
we
that
all do
that's
pop out of the womb like, "Do, do, do," but then we get talked out of, and I was like, I no one hated themselves as much as I did. I hated myself to the core of my being. I couldn't even stand being alone with myself.
Oh,
My drug of choice was people.
yeah.
Anyone, anywhere to distract me from having to be alone with myself because I hated me. And
Mm.
that's why when I tell people there's nothing about yourself you can't change, I change everything about myself because I went from I can't stand my effing self to
Mhm.
I
I love
love and adore you
Yeah.
exactly how you
Yeah.
are.
Yep.
You are perfect. You are whole. You're
Mhm.
everything you need and have desired to be. And so when I tell you I have been drugged through the most lowest lowest of lows, the hottest hell you've ever experienced, like Satan's asshole. That's where I was. And I put
Oh.
myself there. No one put me there. I put me there.
Yeah.
No one drugged me through those low lows. I put me there. But then once I went like this, it was like,
Yeah.
The ecstasy you feel from being the fullest version of yourself, you're just like,
Yeah.
oh,
A
I don't know
thousand
what
percent.
drug could get me this. It is just like the pureness of like, this is what's available for you
This
at
is what is
every given
available for you. Yeah.
moment.
So good. So good. It is literal days of heaven here on earth. So for those of you just like, oh, my future is secure, I know where I'm going. It's not about where you're going.
It's where you
It,
are.
it's where you are now.
Heaven,
Bring
heaven,
it. That's
the
what we're meant
kingdom
to
of
do.
heaven is
Is at
it's
home.
in the moment. It is right
Yes.
here, right now. It is deep within your being. It is not external. It's not coming once after you croak. It's not coming once you shed this meat suit. The kingdom of heaven is upon us at every single given moment. And if you're not experiencing it, it's because you have put yourself in a place where you've blocked all the light.
Yeah. Yeah. That has been, as I'm doing more and more of this work, that's been my experience. And when I look through, like you said, that's, my degree is in biblical studies. So like, I
Yeah,
love
you
it
know.
too. It's like, I believe that's what the book meant, days of heaven here on earth. And if you look at every time God came down, God came down, God came down, it's like I'm with you. I searched outside all the time for,
Mhm.
even my relationship with God, was always like outside, and it's
It
like,
was a
no.
man in the sky, right? Did he have a
Yeah.
beard?
Yeah, and it's like now it's all here. I'm meant to live days of heaven here on earth, and this
Yep.
is what this means, doing the thing that I'm called to do. And
Mhm.
I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful that I think this is the start of just a lovely relationship, friendship, and I'm in your corner cheering you on, girl. Go and get your stuff and do your thing. And
Yeah.
um, I'm just so happy that you're here, Tammy. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Karen. You are giving this wonderful gift to the world. I appreciate all of your gifts. You are so riddled with gifts, my love. And now they're busting forth. They're just going to keep coming too. Within
Thank
the
you.
next year, you're going to find your gifts are like appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah, I
Appearing
receive
out
it.
of nowhere. They're going to come. They're going to overwhelm you with how richly they're going to bless your life.
Thank
So
you.
just stay open because
I am. I'm staying open. I got lots to receive.
yes,
Um,
forevermore.
Amen. Thank you, Tammy. Take care.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Coming Back to Love, the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please make sure to click the link in the description to take you to the full video episode on our YouTube channel. If you absolutely love what we're about, please follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave us a review. For more inspiration and resources, visit my website at KarenWalkerCohn.com, where you'll find all the ways you can connect with me. I would love to hear your suggestions for topics, questions, and future guests you'd like to hear from to support your coming back to love journey. In the meantime, have an inspiring rest of your day.